This is Sean with Voices Levana. We're doing Bob Solomon stories. Purpose of these is so people can reminisce, tell their point of view. Everybody can kind of check each other's out. And this is a person that's known Bob for a very, very, very long time. Patti, Flannery, how are you doing, Patti?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
All right, so where are you at currently?
I'm actually in Quincy, Massachusetts.
And I got to stay in your house the last night when we came back from the Fagawi. So,
Oh, okay. Was that on the Cape Cod house or Quincy?
I don't know.
Okay.
It was a whirl. After 10 days with Bob, everything became just like a whirlwind, you know?
Exactly.
But it was 2019. So,
Perfect. Okay, good.
all right. So let's just establish first off, where did you first meet Bob? Where was the first moment you met Bob?
Well, believe it or not, it was in a bar on Cape Cod called Celebrities.
All right, so let's talk about some of those early Bob memories. What were you doing there? Were you going to school there? What was kind of the living dynamic of age of life? Just kind of explain what was going on.
So my friends and I would rent a cottage down the Cape, and we would rent them for the summer. Initially, we rented for maybe a week or two. And this particular time, we had rented for the summer when we met Bob. We met him, I believe, on a Thursday night, him and another buddy. And we told him about happy hour. And we said, you'll have to come to happy hour. A friend of ours played in a band at one of the local bars. Actually, it was the bar that we met Bob at. I said, on Saturday, they do a happy hour here. It was called Celebrities. So that's how it all started. And it went from there. And it's been a friendship close to like 35, 40 years, a long time.
So when you guys first met, how would you kind of describe Bob's personality? Everybody says it's big, but what are some specific things that really stood out to you?
Well, Bob was really friendly and his buddy was a little quieter. But after a little while, the buddy started talking. And when we were telling Bob about happy hour, he said, that sounds like so much fun. You know, we're definitely going to come. So I think he was just, and then from there on, of course, I realized this, that he was the type of person when he walked in somewhere, he just made friends. If you were with Bob and you walked in somewhere and didn't know anyone, by the time you left, you knew at least 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 people.
Bob also had a very protective personality for his close friends and people they would meet. Was there any situations that he stood up for the little guy that you can kind of remember?
Well, I know that he was the type of guy that engaged people. And I'm trying to think about, he was always protective. If something looked like it was going to go awry someplace that we were at, he would definitely look out for us. You know, I remember one instance that we were in a place and it looked like there was going to be some trouble. And he just said, oh, come on, we got to get out of here. So that type of thing. And he was always a very caring and interested in what you did and what you like to do as far as having fun. And he was always interested in people's lives and their livelihood too. Yeah. So what do you do? How do you like that? And he was, and then, he'd be in a bar and would be having fun and would be up dancing. And it would just always be a fun night with Bob.
Well, let's go from the night to the day. So here's a beautiful shot of Bob looking like he wanted to have some protection from the sun, but either he thought that he was trying to go with the skeleton look or something and just let it ride. And the next question to this is, did he rub it in or did you just leave lines and get burnt around the lines on his body?
The lines did not get rubbed in. We were down at that picture. We were down in Wellfleet that day. And it was really fun. And Bob, he always liked to, he learned how to windsurf when he first started coming down to the Cape. So he ended up coming down for the Cape in the summers with us because I called him when the next year came along. We met him one year, called him the next summer and said, we need one more person for our house at the Cape. And I said, would you be interested? And he said, yes, count me in. So he didn't know any of us except maybe myself and one of the other girls. and he just fit right in and came in and just one of the things that he wanted to do while he was at the Cape that summer was learn to windsurf. So he ended up meeting a group of people over at West Dennis Beach that were windsurfers, and he just picked it up and just did it. He just loved it. So we used to have a lot of fun with him that way, going to the beaches when he'd windsurf.
Now, how long were you guys there, and did anybody work, or was it just having a great time the whole time?
Well, most of us worked and would come down on Fridays and would spend vacation down. There were a couple of, one of the girls was a school teacher, so she was down for the summer. And then Bob was working, and he would be coming down on the weekends. He was out in, I think he was working out in Springfield area, and he would come down on the weekends and go back, say Monday morning, or maybe take a long weekend and then head back from the Cape like a Monday night or Tuesday. So there was always someone around though. And if it came to some evening that nobody was around, Bob would go out and meet other people to be around.
So what would be like the normal sequence? You start off Friday. What time do you guys usually get there? What's kind of normal tradition stuff that would end up happening from Friday to Sunday when everybody would leave?
Exactly. Well, on Fridays, we used to go to, we didn't make happy hour on Fridays. Happy hours were on like Saturdays and Sundays. But on Fridays, we would go to a place called Sundances. And that was a hangout for Friday night. They had live music and there'd always be a good crowd there. Saturday, all of us would get up early and we'd go to the beach, would be at the beach for the day. Then we'd leave the beach, go back, shower, change, and go to happy hour, which started around 4 o'clock, 4 to 7. And the funny thing is, like, when Bob went to his first happy hour, he said he just couldn't believe it because they'd have a wet t-shirt contest, giving out free beers. And they also, the band's name was The Shoes. Our friend Sean Mahoney and a couple of the other guys were in the band. And Sean would get up on the rafters, which were like these beams up, up at the ceiling. He'd get up and he'd have a bottle of peppermint schnapps and would do shoe shots. So people would go up, take their sneakers off, he'd pour from the heavens, and would be doing shoe shots. So Bob just couldn't believe that. So he just loved that. And then Saturday night after happy hour, we'd go back to the house, we'd freshen up, and we'd go out again. And then we were out until probably about 1 o'clock, another bar with, live music and dancing. And then Sundays, we would maybe do a breakfast at the house and then go to the beach. So it was, and then that Sunday night, there was a place that we'd go. There was a band called, what the heck was the name of the band? This band that played Sunday nights at this other place called Jason's. And we used to go there and we'd find the spot that had the air conditioning because it only had one air conditioning, and we'd all be up dancing and sweating and we'd just stand under the air conditioning. So, and then Monday morning we'd all get up and head off to work wherever, Boston, Springfield. And yeah, so that was pretty much the routine for the whole summer, actually.
All right. So something I didn't realize is that looks like Bob was in Baywatch. I don't know if that picture right there is
right.
True in the Northeast coast, but definitely looks like a stud. And who's the other gentleman that's with him in that pic?
You know what? I can't think of his name. And I was thinking after I sent the pictures, I'm like, oh geez, what was that guy's name? But I remember he was down for about a week one summer. And that picture I think was down in Wellfleet. And it was a place called the Beachcomber down there, but they also had really nice beaches. And then the picture underneath that was at Mayflower Beach in Dennis. And that was a beach that we always went to. It was a really beautiful beach. And Bob just loved that beach.
Who all was in that photo? Looks like it's a pretty tight crew.
Yeah. It was on the far right is Nancy. That's me next to Nancy, Patti, our friend Sean, and Roberto. Nancy and Roberto have been married now for about 35 years. So on the Cape, there were a lot of Cape Cod romances that led to marriage, and that people are still married to this day.
Well, that's beautiful, but let's talk about the ocean. So
yeah.
the things about the water, and sometimes there might be sharks, sometimes there might be other scenarios. Do you have any stories of things that might have happened with the ocean? Maybe somebody trying to do something and it turned out a little squirrely or whatever. Could be good, bad, ugly, but some epic stories that happen from being on the water or just off the water from the beach.
Well, one time down at the National Seashore, Bob had won a couple of jet skis. And I think he was by himself this one particular day, and he had the jet ski out. And at one point, we just didn't know where Bob went. So one of the guys said, I think we better, look for Bob. Well, anyways, he had ended up going like down the coast, not completely, of course, and then made a turnaround. So before we called the Coast Guard, we were able to make contact with Bob. But that day, we're like, where did he go? And he was out enjoying the ocean.
This looks like you guys are at summer camp as adults, which is a little awkward. But anyway, where exactly is this in the wooded area?
This is at, let me see. I think this might be at Scargo Lake, and which they have like a deck area. I think it might be that. And these were a group of guys with Bob's on the far left. And these were a group of guys that were Bob's friends. And he ended up, of course, bringing them to meet with us. And we all got together and had a really good time. And then the top picture there on the right, that was a couple of the guys, like I say, the same group. We got a picture of the guys and then one with all of us. So, yeah, so that day was pretty fun.
So how was Bob's role with the guys? How did guys respond and deal with Bob? What's kind of that dynamic of him bringing guys to a situation?
Yeah, Bob was always good about that, and he had worked with a couple of these guys, I think. And yeah, and he would, all right, let's, Patti, this is Jeff. Patti, this is Bob, this is John, and really funny, but he was very inclusive. He'd always have someone in, and if we were outside at a place, he would say, hi, my name's Bob, what's your name? And so he'd start the conversation going. But he was always liked the the windsurfing. He scuba dived. He did a lot of different things. And of course, he loved football. So that was always a common ground, talking about football as well. So,
it's something, I got to bring this up. He, I don't want to say had a fun lie to a bunch of people in Indianapolis for a long time, but going off of scuba diving, he told me when I first met him that he had a 2-person submarine at the Geist Marina underneath the docks that nobody knew about. Actually, no, he said it was at the sailing club, and that one time at night they only could get it in at night, and they painted it pink. He said, yeah, we painted it, like we had to bring it in at night. We had to paint it pink, and so you could see it underwater. But we kind of clipped the dam one time, but we were down close to the dam, and we kind of hit the dam with the sub. And for years, he told everybody that there was a sub that he can't tell where it is. And I finally, after nights of hanging out, are you? And he finally broke down. He's like, no, there's never been a sub.
Well, he did that. Excuse me. He did that on the Cape in one of the places over in Dennisport, and he said to a group of girls, "See that guy over there? That's Robin Williams, and we're here." And they're like, "What?" And Bob said, I think Bob said he was the director of the film that was being filmed on the Cape, and that not to really say anything to Robin Williams. And the girls were asking, "Well, what kind of movie is it?" He's going, "Oh, a romantic comedy." Definitely, and so that lasted for a while. And then finally, I guess the girls got a good look at the guy that, Bob was saying was Robin Williams, and said, "I don't think that's Robin." Well, anyways, it was so funny. The girls got so mad at him. They're like, "I can't believe you told us that story. We fell for it." But I remember that story being told.
That's beautiful. All right. So who are the 2 other ladies in the photo and the 2 other guys besides Bob there, for sure?
Yeah. So this was in front of my house. I own a house on the Cape I bought in 1989. So Bob is on the far left, and the middle is Roberto, and then next to Roberto is Cindy. And then on the bottom group, there's me, Nancy, and Cindy's husband, Pete. They weren't married at that point, I don't think. But yeah, but we looked pretty cleaned up then, so we mustn't have gotten to happy hour yet.
So what kind of things would you guys do at the house, and what kind of things would you cook as friends together? Let's talk about some cooking. Let's talk about things you'd make.
Oh yeah, well, Roberto and Nancy, they really like to cook, so they would cook up ribs. We'd have cookouts with people over. 4th of July was always a big cookout at the house with maybe about 15 people, and that was always fun. And one of the guys, he did the chicken wings, and everybody would kind of pitch in on what they like to cook. So it was mostly like burgers, hot dogs, and when we were just at the house, so we'd just grab something to eat outside.
So rock and roll, you guys have probably seen a lot of different bands over the years together. What was this one, and where was this at?
Okay, these are our friends, and this is the Cape Cod Traveling All Stars. And this, I believe, was at Puffer Belly's, a bar that was over in Hyannis. And they would just do all kinds of antics on the stage, and they'd give away T-shirts. Everybody would be dancing and singing, and they were a really fun group to go to watch. And yeah, and then so we'd go over to Hyannis. It was probably about 15 minutes from Dennis. And then I remember, I don't know if it was coming back from one of the nights seeing the band, but I remember one night there seemed to have been a few extra people that were going to be in the car, and they ended up being in the trunk of the car back to Dennis. So that was a little crazy, but
I'm sure there were some situations of Bob on stage.
Yes, yep. And he would take the microphone, and he would, have some words to say. And he started, I had never heard of a prost before, but when we would be together, he would say, okay, we're going to do a prost. And we're like, well, what's that? So we'd all have to practically kneel down and raise our glasses. And we had to prost 3 things: to God, Cape Cod, and whatever the third one might be. So we'd be all there doing to God, Cape Cod, and so-and-so's birthday, and we'd all, do our cheer. And so he got us started on having prosts whenever we did anything. And yeah, I mean, and I think he gave thought to some of this stuff, and that's how it came out.
So I remember this when I was at Nantucket, that we did this a few times, but do you remember like the record of how many cups for the beer fall to be able to be the one and drink them all?
Yes, for some reason the number's 27 is sticking in my mind. I think it was about 27. And Bob started, it started off a little, 5 cups or something, and then add on, and then people would come around and they'd, get in there. And actually the beer fall worked pretty good. The top cup, the person at the top had to start the beer fall, and, a couple of times it landed all on the floor of the tent at Fagawi. But yeah, it was pretty fun.
How many was it a goal? Like, you see how many you can knock out? Like, you get 5, so-and-so gets 7. Like,
yes,
to do the whole thing.
Yes, definitely. So it definitely became competitive. Like, okay, well, what did we do the other day? Or what was, okay, we got to beat that. And Bob would be all set. He'd be in there with his cups, and oh yeah. And okay, so at Fagawi, you paid just a certain amount, and then you got these tickets for your drinks. So then you didn't have to really pay anymore for your drinks. So they'd be coming up, 5 or 6 of the guys would be going up, and they'd be coming back with, like 4 cups of beer or whatever it is. So whatever it was that they ended up coming back, that's what became of the beer fall.
All right, so here's out on Nantucket, and I'm not sure what years this is, but how many years were you out on Nantucket for the Fagawi race?
It was definitely over 20 for me, and Bob, he went a couple of times before I started going. So he had met this guy, Paul Tatro, that introduced him to Fagawi. And this Paul invited Bob out on his boat that year and to stay at Nantucket. So Bob was saying, well, let me pitch in. What do I, and Paul said, no, we're all set now. You can bring whatever you want. And Bob ended up showing up on the docks with these cases of beer and hard liquor. And so the guys, they instantly liked Bob with that, bringing that with them. So that's how Bob ended up starting going to Fagawi. And then afterwards he was saying to us, you guys got to come. It's a lot of fun. So then we started going. And we would, rent houses over there, and there'd be a group of us going, and we'd wait for them to come in from the race on a Saturday. They would race over to Nantucket from Hyannis on Saturdays. So we'd wait for them down at the piers, and then it would be really a fun time when they all came in. And Bob always loved flags. If you see on the bottom left picture there, the boat has the American flag, and then there's a few other flags there. He always loved flags. And then when he got involved with the veterans, he would, a couple of veterans were killed, and he got a flag in their memory and would put that on his boat. So he was well known for his flags. And then when he started getting boats himself and renting them, when he was the captain, they had a captain party over in Hyannis on a Friday night to set the weekend off. And one year, Bob ended up buying all the boat participants, all the boats, a flag. So every boat in the Afagawi, which could be anywhere from 200 to 250, Bob actually bought personally and would hand them out at the captain's party.
Well, that's pretty impressive. So
yeah. And the boats look beautiful.
Do you remember some unique memories that happened during the race when you were on the boat? Like some kind of seaworthy stories that really kind of stand out within any of the races?
Well, there were a couple. I never ended up going on the boat. I would always, my friends and I, we would take the ferry over. But there were different times when I think maybe the time might have been off when they started the race. And I think another time, I think another boat bumped into them. So there were definitely those stories, but I wasn't on the boat when that happened. I didn't go on the boat. I took the ferry.
Well, I want to interject this one because when I was with them in 2019, and I've said this on another interview, but it was a perfect example of how Bob's intuition and being able to captain a boat helped him win a situation. So we had left, and all the 250 boats get out in the ocean, and got to the point we couldn't see shore anymore. Then all of a sudden it was dead air, and all the boats were pretty much right up on top of each other, and a lot of them start banging into each other. And then people would try to put a foot out to be able to separate their boat from the next boat that's getting close. And Bob was yelling, don't put your limbs out. They're going to get snapped off and everything. And then I'm filming on the boat, interviewing veterans and the Navy SEALs and all that stuff. And I'm going, Bob, what are we going to do? And he goes, I'm like, can we just flip the motor on for a little bit and go? He goes, no, that'll disqualify us. I'm like, so all these boats can't put the motor on, and they're just bouncing around like they're in a bathtub that's getting sloshed back and forth. How is it going to happen? He goes, well, if you drop out, you drop out, but we're not going to drop out. And right after that, he looks kind of to the west, and I could see it, and he was pointing. He goes, you see where those ripples are over there? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, that's where the wind is. We need to get there. So let's say everybody's going towards 9 o'clock. We go towards 12 o'clock. That's not even the direction towards Nantucket. And we just barely start creeping over there. And all of a sudden we start picking up, and we're like at 2 knots, then 3 knots, then 4 knots, then 5 knots. And there was a girl that was from the area that taught people how to sail. And she was young. She was in her early 20s, and she got on, she basically got on the wheel. And as we start cooking, Bob's like, you got it, you got it. And we start blowing past everybody. 14 miles straight run, 1/4 place. And
Wow.
holding on to cables, swinging in the wind, trying to interview Navy SEALs and wounded warriors as we're flying across the ocean, blowing past everybody. And that was just a beautiful testament to him seeing where you need to go and knowing how to really work the conditions. of the atmosphere, the water, and putting somebody correct at the helm to be able to get it there.
Right, right, right. Wow. That is fantastic. That is fantastic. There were a lot of good stories on the, people like on the boats themselves, but yeah, that's a great one. And placing fourth is wonderful because the boats that are in different divisions, there's a lot of boats in the division. So that was really good.
Yeah, and on the way back to, I know we're going to talk about this next pick, but on the way back from Nantucket to Hyannis on Monday, one of the boats that we kind of got to be friends with the people on the boat, we decided to race them back to Hyannis. And halfway through the trip back, I think Bob was the original one to throw an orange, and then hot dogs started coming out, and then became a food war from boat to boat. That was one of the funniest things. And I got that on video, and that's going to be on the Fagawi movie that I'm putting together. It's hilarious. But in this photo here, you got holding up the newspaper, and it looks like, pretty much the team there. But what was on the newspaper?
I'm pretty sure that was the cover of, that was the Cape Cod Times. And and Bob is on the front cover of that with the boat. I forget what they placed that year, but they ended up being interviewed, and especially being from Indianapolis. So that was pretty exciting. I probably still have that newspaper at the house down the Cape because I saved a number of different articles because he was featured in different articles. So so he would always be the type of person, he didn't really, not that he didn't like it, but he would definitely give credit where credit was due. He would never say like, it was always like we, the team, or we did this, we did that, we had, so it just always worked out well. And that picture actually, after coming back on Sunday, is it Sunday or Monday? I think.
Are you talking about the photo that's on the top of the picture? Is that what you're referring to, or which one are you referring to?
Oh, I'm sorry. So the top right that was in the tent at Fagawi. And then the bottom one, the one with more people in it, that was back at Baxter's, which is in Hyannis, which is on the water. So the tradition was that after we came back from Fagawi, we all went to Baxter's, and Bob would have a bag, the captain's bag, he would say. And he had a number of different like goodies in the basket, in the bag. And you'd get chosen, you did like, you put your name down and you won this and won that. And so it was pretty fun. And then towards the end of that, Bob would say, well, I think it's time to officially close out Fagawi for this year. So that was always like the last like little speech was, okay, Fagawi is officially over and we'll see you guys next year. So it was fun. We'd have fun back at Baxter's. It was a lot of good.
So in 2019, when we pulled up on Baxter's, I'm going to tell what happened leading up to it, but you interviewed me for 7 minutes.
I did?
On tape. And I talk about the whole trip, and you asked me a lot of good questions, so I appreciate that. But what was hilarious, because we went to Baxter's before we went to Nantucket.
Sure.
So he's like, oh, we're coming back to Baxter's. So as we're getting into, let's just call it the marina area, we're coming in, and Bob starts saying some stuff like, we're shutting the engines off. We're doing this on straight sail, and we're just going to cruise right up to it. And as the height of the boat compared to the pylons and the deck at Baxter's, if you were standing on top of the boat, you were the exact height of people on the deck of the restaurant.
Okay.
So as we come in, there was a small boat that was basically tied up with a rope at the bottom of the pole, down like 15 feet down in the water or whatever it was. And we come in, and Bob's like, we got to buzz that boat and get him out of the way because we got to dock. So we come in first, and we're probably 15, 20 feet off of Baxter's structure. And coming in, then somebody's going, hey, you guys got to move. We got the VIP or whatever coming in. And we do a lap, and then we pull back around. And Bob, technically, he didn't use the motor, didn't use anything. And he just guided that thing right in. And didn't have a motor on to stop it, and it literally stopped on the dime. And I remember looking as we're coming up on people, and I just all of a sudden was face to face with another person. They were drinking a beer, and they're like, "You want a beer?" And I'm like, "Yeah." That was so. And then he did the. You remember him doing the everybody on the top deck of the boat, and everybody was doing push-ups.
Yes, yes. That was the 22 push-ups, I believe, right? For the veterans.
Yeah. And there was a ton of people on the boat. And that's going to be in the Fagawi movie that I have all the footage I'm going to be putting together that I never did.
Good.
But anyway, what else would you like to say in general about just your friendship with Bob? Is there anything else that you like to bring up? And what would you also like to say to the family?
Oh, geez. I think that, Bob was such a big presence, when you met Bob, and he was just such a nice guy and very caring, just loved to enjoy life and would encourage people, nope, you do it. You can do this. You can drive this boat. And, he just really just loved involving people. And I say now, after knowing him all these years, that when I initially met him, he's the one who stayed in contact. He'd give me a call after a couple of months, and a couple of months later invited us up to a Halloween party one year, the first year we met him, and then continued the friendship. But when I look back, I just can't believe how lucky I was and how blessed I was that he always made the effort to give me a call, and it was just so really nice, because we ended up being in the house on the house down the Cape for years. We ended up going to Newport, a bunch of us. And so, and to the family, I know that it's an awfully big loss, and it's just so sad. But I do believe that Bob lived a full life. He loved people. He enjoyed himself. And I think we'll think of Bob, and we're just always going to smile, because that's the way he was. He just brought a smile to people's lives. And I think that's one thing that is pretty nice to remember someone by.
I think the best thing about Bob is he always tried to make other people's lives better.
Yes, that's right. That's a good way. Yes, definitely. He really did. He really did. He's, I'm going to miss him, because he would call, "Patti." I go, "Hi, Bob." And then we go from there. But yeah, he's going to be missed by so many people, because
anytime he'd see me in public, he'd go, "Shawnee," and I'd go, "Bobby." And then we'd start.
Yeah, I know. He just had that charisma, And loved the family. And he used to talk about on the holidays, I think they played football, him and his brothers and whatnot. So, when he would call his mother, if I was with him, he'd put me on the phone with the mom, and I'd get to talk to her. And she was always so sweet. She's such a sweet lady. But yeah, so it's quite a legacy when you think about all the people that he brought into, and that all these people that met each other, and he's still doing it to this day. We're all getting together about Bob and sharing stories, and yeah.
Well, that's a kind of good point. So back to the where it's all going to be held is at bobsolomonstories.com, and we're going to continue to add people. So people get on the website, put in your info, and you'll be notified when more stories from people that love Bob are added to the platform. But Patti, it was really great seeing you again, and I thank you for letting us stay at your place that was rented for Nantucket for that weekend, and back at your house both.
You're very welcome, and thank you for including me on this. I feel very honored that you chose me to talk about Bob. Thank you, and I know others too.
People that know and love him. I do this normally with clients, and it's part of my job. But this is Bob, so we're doing it with the right people for the right reasons for Bob. And I thank you for your time. And just stay on the line. I'm going to close this one out.
All right, thank you.